All right. Good morning, everyone. We're just giving the rest of the team a few minutes to join, then we'll resume. Just 2 more minutes. Okay. Right. Just 1 more minute, then we'll start. A few seconds. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's another fantastic Friday again, ending the week on a high note. I'm just going to play our theme song just to get you in the mood. Then we'll start our session today. All right. Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to Get Ahead 2026 Audit Level 1, Session 3. Congratulations for actually getting and reaching to this point of the last session for Audit Level 1. Okay. So today we're covering the sampling worksheets in Audit International. My name is Samugeli Siwenyoga. I have a whole team supporting me. So should you have any questions regarding the content, the audit itself, so the topic that we're covering today being the sampling, or you have questions relating to the software itself, just type in your question on the chat box and I have a whole team supporting me to respond to those questions. All right. Please also note that this session is being recorded, so a recording will be made available on YouTube in a few weeks' time. So should you maybe want to go over the content at your own pace, please just go to our YouTube channel and that's where you'll find the recording for this session. All right, let's get to it. All right, so today I won't have a lot of content on my slides. The most content is us actually getting on the ground and looking on the actual software and some of the tools that we have for sampling in the Audit International template. Okay, let's get to the tool. So our session will just be about 25 minutes. So I will encourage that should you have a question, please just pop it as we go with the session, because we might not have a Q&A session at the end of this session, okay? And over the next 25 minutes, I'll be walking you through the sampling models that have been built into the Caseware Audit International template. I will be focusing specifically on how they support you in determining the sample size for tests of detail and the test of control. Knowing that this session is a report, is a recap actually of what we've already covered in the e-learning, but with a different focus. We are not just revisiting the theory. We're just going to unpack some, specifically today, we will be particularly focused on the test of detail, which is where most of the judgment sits, okay? The sampling model for test of control is more straightforward in our template. So, and it was actually covered very well in the e-learning. So I'll just only touch on it briefly. Okay. Let's look at the template. Let me just minimize all these, collapse all these folders. Okay. So the Audit International template itself is designed to accommodate a wide range of clients and engagement scenarios, right? Which is the reason why at the beginning of the engagement, which is every engagement, when you're setting up the file, you are required to complete a document called the optimizer checklist. One may ask, why are we talking about the optimizer checklist? We're looking for sampling. This is because the appearance or non-appearance of the sampling tools is dependent on the response that you put in the optimizer checklist. So let's look at on the optimizer checklist and see how it works and where exactly does it determine if we're seeing the procedures for or the tool for our sampling, okay? So this document I'm talking about for setting up our file is found under the engagement file setup folder, okay? And it's document 400 optimizer checklist, okay? How this document works is it identifies the documents and some procedures that will or will not appear. So based on the response that you give in this column, this document will decide which documents will you have on your template or which documents will you actually not need in your template, because we don't want to have a whole list of documents that are not even relevant to your engagement. An example is, and I'm just looking at procedure 5 here. If your engagement, you know that you won't be using any auditor's expert, you don't need procedures that speak about the auditor's experts, and you don't need any documents that relate to auditor's experts. A lot of things are actually filtered here. Another one is, let's say, you see procedure 4 is talking about continuance of an audit engagement. Should it be that it's a continuance of an engagement and it's not an initial engagement? The types of documents that you need are different. So what this tool does, which is the tool being the optimizer checklist, is that it reads your responses when you say, okay, it's a continuance, then yes, then it's going to delete everything that would be needed should you have been auditing the engagement at which is an initial engagement, first time auditing that client. Okay. As it relates to the sampling, the procedure that determines the appearance or non-appearance of the sampling worksheets is procedure number 15. So here, this is where you say, are you anticipating on using sampling? So looking at the engagement, are you expecting to have any sampling that is going to happen? So here you'll either answer yes or answer no. Okay. Just another tip, because usually this is done at the initial stage of the engagement and usually done by the seniors, right? And we are level 1. So should it happen that you are assigned in an engagement, right? Then they say, can you please work on the let me say operating expenses, which is the normal section that you get assigned to, right? Then they say, in this section, we want you to select a sample. But when you go to your file, you're not seeing any worksheet that speaks about sampling. What you need to do before panicking is just go back to the optimizer checklist and check, did they respond yes or no to let me say, question 15 that asks about the checklist or the forms for sampling. All right. One thing I also want you to note is that for test of detail, the sampling templates that are available are only for 6 sections. So we have it for inventory, for receivables, payables, revenue, cost of sales, and payroll and other expenses. But if it happens that you need the sampling calculator and you're working on a different section, let's say you're working on, I can't think of an example of a different section, but if you're working on a section other than those that I've named, which are these ones, if you're working on a section other than those that I've named, all you need to do is just to copy the document from any of these sections that I've named. So you can copy the sampling tool and paste it, rename it, renumber it. Okay. So all I'm trying to highlight here is that we haven't limited you. This tool is available and it's available to use, even though it's by default available to certain sections, but you can actually copy the template, paste it to a different section and reuse it, right? Just do not forget to rename. Okay. So yeah, that's the first thing I wanted to show you about the sampling tools. So for now, I want us to jump to one of the sampling tools, any one of the sampling tools that has to do with the test of details. So you can just open any using this link, because this link will be linked to directly that tool, right? Otherwise, you can go to any of the sections. For instance, let's say, in my case, I'll be using inventory. So I'll go to the lead sheets and working papers, expand it, go to the current assets, which is the folder 400, expand it. Then inventories are the first folder there. So the document I will open is this one, worksheet 405.13. That is the worksheet for inventory substantive sampling test of details. Okay. I already have this document open, but in your case, I'm just going to give you 1 minute to have the document open on your side as well. Then we can have a look at it and see how the information flows in this document. Just a minute. As you're opening the document, for sampling, one thing I want to show, I want to just be talking about, just taking you through what you'll see in the document, is the conclusion that we're trying to reach with this document. So the ultimate conclusion is we are trying to reach a point where we are satisfied that the sample size suggested, so the sample size that we have, is sufficient for purpose of substantive testing, right? And also be satisfied that the test objectives have been achieved, right? The reason why would be sampling is because sometimes we just cannot test the entire population. So that would mean that we have to sample from the population, then be at a position where we can express an opinion based on the results that we found on the sample for so expressing an opinion about over the entire population, which is why when we select the sample, when we determine our sample size and select our actual sample items, we need to make sure that they are representative of the entire population. You'll note that as we are using these tools, a lot of professional judgment is applied in determining which sampling method to use, whether you want to use the statistical method or non-statistical method, determining the sample size, and also selecting, determining the sampling technique, and also selecting the items. So what's important about sampling is you should always be in a position where you are able to justify why you chose that sample size and how you selected that sample. So your basis must be reasonable enough to justify that you are making a conclusion about a population from the results that you just saw about this sample. Okay. And another thing is we all know that sampling is guided by ISA 530. So, but all firms have their own sampling methodology that they use. Like we were introducing the Audit International methodology a few weeks back. You will remember that we have the standards, but then each firm then decides on how they will be applying those standards. So each firm also have their own sampling methodology that stipulates how each engagement would be well within the firm would determine the sample size and how to select the items in line with the ISA 530 requirements. Okay, so where our template, where this tool now comes in is it's there to guide you on how to implement that firm methodology in line with ISA 530, which is our relevant standard right now. Okay, I do want to highlight that our template is giving you the guidance in terms of how you document and how you determine the sample size. But the most important decisions are the ones that where you're applying your professional judgment to get to the results of what the sample size is and selecting your items. Okay, let's look at how it works. First thing that you do when you are using Audit International automatic documents, open the document guidance. The document guidance sits, so sometimes it appears here at the top, but sometimes it doesn't. If you're not seeing any document guidance, all you need to do is just to click on this icon of a purple book with a question mark, right? This will make the audit guidance appear. So as a tip, if you're using the tool for the first time, any of our documents, just make sure that you open the document guidance, which will guide you in terms of how to use the document and which relevant standards apply to the document and also the objective of the document itself. Right? To hide it back again, you just click on the document guidance icon, then it's gonna vanish. All right. Another thing that I usually highlight is that actually each firm can modify the document guidance at template level should there be any further guidance that they want to add in your entity document guidance. Okay. Now, what else is available? We have the settings. So how this tool works, it first has the settings. The settings, first is the one which are just mainly firm options. So when you click the first checkbox, what you'll see here are your firm options. They talk about your percentage confidence level, and your reliability factors. But note that this is set by your firm author at template level. So you won't have to be, as a trainee, you won't have to be changing anything in this section because it's changed at template level. So it applies throughout the engagements. Right. So if this, and these concepts that are dealt with here mainly support when you are doing the sampling, which is the statistical sampling. Okay, so we'll just untick the checkbox so that that section does not appear. One thing I want you to note, actually, before we close it, is you see that there's some technical terms that are used here. Terms like confidence level, reliability factor. What is that? Should you want to know what exactly these concepts are, what we've done is that we've added some just key descriptions of all these technical terms that you'll keep on seeing throughout the engagement. And you'll see that the most technical terms are usually related to the statistic sampling because that's the one that has mostly just the science behind it. So if you want to see guidance on what these terminologies are, just click on print contents of information buttons. So when you click here and you scroll right to the bottom, you will have some explanations of what each and every technical term that you might find confusing in the tool is. So this is where you find the descriptions. All right, let us deselect these. We know what they do now. Then another one is determining how you want your sample. Do you want to sample from monetary units or from number of items? So whichever option you select here will determine how these cells will work. So if you have monetary units, then it's going to have your currency here, which will be the currency as you had set in the info store. But if you say number of items, then the currency disappears. It now says items. So it's either 19,000 items, 16,000 items. Now it's not talking about the rand value. Okay, let's put it back. Again, we have these expected misstatements and expected misstatements capped. These are other technical concepts. And if you want to learn more about them and what they do, you can just go and read about them in the info buttons that are available there, the ones that I just showed you. All right. Then what else is here? Here, this is where you document your actual account that you are testing. Then the other section, sample selection. Sample selection is a section, so we're done with the guidance section, we're done with the settings. Now we're looking at the sample selection section. In this section, this is where you decide whether you are using statistical method or you're using the non-statistical method. Again, professional judgment is applied to determine which actual method will you be using in this instance. Okay, then other details that you document here are details that are important for whoever will be selecting the sample and evaluating the results. So these I'm saying that because it might happen that the person that selects the sample or that completes this document is a different person from a person that actually does the testing. So here you are documenting some other key details that they need to know as they are performing the actual audit work. Or even for yourself, for your reviewer to know your actual thought process that you applied. So it's stuff like the purpose of the test. That's important to know. What is the objective of this testing? Specific matters that need to be considered in designing the test. the procedures to be performed. So the procedures would normally be coming from your audit program. Then what would constitute a misstatement? That is a big one. And we use this as we are evaluating the misstatements to say, okay, fine, there is a difference, but does it constitute a misstatement? So there is some judgment that you apply in determining whether that difference constitutes a misstatement or not when you're evaluating the results of your sample. All right, now the actual methods. We're gonna start with, so all the content here, from here up to just before the sampling test, is determined by whether you had selected statistical or you had selected non-statistical. Okay, so here, let's start with the judgmental. The judgmental sampling, fine, we're gonna have first, we do specify whether we're sampling by monetary units or we're sampling by the number of items. Okay. Then here, this is where we key in our population. And mind you that the word population is actually a defined term, and it's one of the concepts that are in the defined terms inside this tool. So the number that you see in the lead sheet, the total, let's say, operating expenses or total inventories in our instance, might not make up your population of the sample, because the population might have items that you need to remove. Let's say some material items, or maybe items that are tested elsewhere. Like in our main session, we made an example of employee costs being, okay, fine, they're part of the operating expenses, but because of their nature, they actually tested elsewhere. Depreciation, part of operating expenses, but because of its nature, it's usually tested with the PPE or whichever asset that it relates to. All right. So those are the different types of adjustments that you'll be making here. Then you'll here determine the planned level of risk reduction. We have two options, which is the moderate and low, and put the comments of why you selected that. Because we're saying that this is judgmental, everything should be supported. Actually, even if you're using statistical sampling, you support everything that you do. Then you determine your sample size. Okay, with the sample size, you'll determine it. Then you will then put your comments to say, why did you determine this sample size? Here, I want you to note that, again, each entity or each firm does have guidance on how you determine sample sizes. And it's usually just easier to use the firm's methodology in determining the sample sizes. And if you want to deviate from the firm methodology, you will then have to support why did you deviate from how the firm methodology. Key thing to understand about sampling, before you touch sampling in any of the engagements that you'll be doing, do ask your managers, what's the sampling methodology of our firm? Then you can maybe go read on that, so that as you complete this document, you are well guided in terms of what is the logic of supporting the sample size that you will be selecting. Okay. Then here you are determining whether you are going to be using random sampling, systematic sampling, or haphazard sampling. Then you determine you determine your sample size, right? Then you put your comments. Okay. Then because everything else is the same after this, let us go back to what happens when you have selected statistical sampling. Okay, should you, in the type of sampling to be used, so the sampling method, had selected statistical, this is how the content would change. Now you would have find the population and the adjustments, everything, the whole concept is still the same. Then there's new things like your tolerable misstatements and expected misstatements. These are defined terms as well. So should you want to learn about them and how they work, you just go to that section and make it show, then go read on those terminologies. Then the table comes with the assertions. Then the first two columns are determined, well, you do select your levels here. When you select the percentage that, well, it's the level of assurance, the percentage, what do you call it again? Let me just, confidence level percentage. Once you select that percentage level percentage, then it's going to come and determine the confidence factor automatically. So it's determined by what had been set in your firm template. You see here 95 is set as 3, so that's what determines this. What do I put under rating for inherent risk and controlled risk? What you put here is what is in the document called the FSA, the financial statement area. So if in the FSA, it had been determined that the inherent risk for inventory completeness is high, then you just go and copy that and say high. Okay? Same thing you do for the controlled risk. The risk factor will automatically calculate because here in the firm template, they would have already determined that if the risk rating is high, then the risk factor should be nil, or if it's medium, it should be 0.3. Okay? Then after you complete the documentation of all these fields, then the system will automatically determine your sample size and your sampling interval. Okay, so that's the information that you're finding in the statistical sampling method within this model. Then you'll go on then to select your items and test them. How the statistical method is more advantageous when you compare it to the non-statistical method is that it's easier to actually say, I wasn't biased. This is my calculation of the sample size. I calculated like this. So it's easier to support your determination of the sample size than when you are just applying your judgment, but wanting to say, I wasn't biased in determining my sample size, right? But both methods have their own advantages and disadvantages. Okay, an edit section for the sampling is this one, the professional judgment checklist. So what this actually shows what this demonstrates to us is that not really that when we are using statistical, we don't apply ourselves. We actually do apply ourselves and we do apply our professional judgment. We don't just leave it to the system to calculate. And this is not, this section is not really available for the judgmental or the non-statistical method because it is determined using the professional judgment every day. Right, so there's all these questions or checklists that you'd have to complete as it relates to how you determined or how you applied your professional judgment in reaching the sample size and the sample interval. All right, that's it about the sampling methods. Then we go on and look at the sampling test results. So after you have performed all the work on your sample, you go and evaluate the results. Before you even start extrapolating the results or projecting them to the population, you need to first evaluate, right? So these are the questionnaires that we have for you to assist you with the evaluation stage. Then after we've evaluated them, then we move to the projection of the misstatements. So we have it. How it works is that you just need to complete these fields, the total population. is as you had determined it here at the beginning after adjustment. Then the total amount of the sample is you have summed up. So you took your sample, then you just sum it up. You sum the amounts. Then they're going to come here. Then let's say the amount is 80,000, just an example. Then the total misstatements in the sample, what's the misstatement for the sample? Let's say it's only 10,000. What this does then, it has a formula that will automatically calculate to project this misstatement to the population. So we are saying that from the work that we did in this sample, we then conclude that in the population of 2,781,347 is a misstatement, 347,000. One thing I want you to note is when you are keying in your total misstatement here, please do not include anomalies. Anything that's an anomaly shouldn't be projected to the population because that misstatement doesn't reflect what's happening with the entire population. But we're not saying that you are ignoring that misstatement, really. We're saying that we're just not going to extrapolate it to the population, but you still need to consider that as an addition to the projected misstatement. So when you're calculating the misstatements, it's going to be this 347 plus that anomaly as a misstatement. Okay, so this is an automatic calculation. Okay, the tolerable misstatement, you will put it there, and it's a defined term, but it's actually from what you would have documented. Then, what do we do with this misstatement? What do we do with this 347? We've got the 347 as a misstatement. What do we do with it? You are then going to create an adjustment. This is not really an adjustment like you're adjusting the financial statements of the client. No, it's actually just a tool that you use now, but for a purpose of recommending adjusting entries to the client. One thing you need to note is okay, let me just add a different number because I already have not adjusting entry number 1. All you need to do here, let's say you clicked new. So you're going to go and click new. Just make sure that on the type, it should not be a normal adjusting entry, but it should rather be an unrecorded projected entry. What will happen with it? It will then go and be accumulated with all the other misstatements that have been noted from different sections that have been scoped in for audit work. Then that report will then be communicated with management or those charged with governance. All right. So that's basically how our tool works in total. Okay. Going back to the slides. Okay. Let me just check in the chat box if I have any questions. Seems like we don't have any questions, but again, back to the slides. Should you be, while using the template or maybe, let's say while using the tool, should you get stuck, then please contact our support team. They are available from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can even book a slot with them. So by clicking here, then you'll get their calendar, book a slot that's favorable to your time frame. Then you will be assigned a consultant to talk to. Else, you can just use the chat functionality in the page. That functionality is gonna then first make you chat with the chatbot. Then afterwards, you will be in a queue, then assigned a consultant to talk to. This is the QR code to our case support team. We do offer training on Audit International every now and again. Should you want to recommend maybe to your manager that maybe your team needs some bit of training on Audit International, you can just show them that they can go to our calendar and check for a slot for training. Okay. And if you have any questions, I saw that there were no questions in the chat box, right? But should you have any questions, be it regarding the content that we're covering today or regarding the series itself, please do email our administrator on ksway.getahead@adaptit.com. Right? But congratulations for reaching the last session for level 1. I hope that you found the series very informative and that you had so much fun. All right. So this marks the end of our session. Thank you very much. Goodbye.